Good afternoon and welcome to this celebration of life for the magnificent Dr. Marsha Della Giustina. I want to extend so much gratitude and a hearty thank you to each and every single one of you here with us today. Those of you physically with us here in the Cutler Majestic, those of you joining virtually from around the world, and those who will join us in the coming days and weeks, even years, as they watch the recording of this gathering. Each of you is a living testimony to the immense impact of Dr. Marsha Della Giustina here at Emerson and far beyond. And through each of you, through your work and words and tenacity and mentorship and love, Marsha's inspiration lives on and on. My name is Julie Avis Rogers, and I am the campus chaplain here at Emerson College. And it has been my honor to work with an incredible planning team, Jonathan Satriali, Sharon Duffy, and Paul Niwa, to bring you this celebration of life today. Satch, Sharon, and Paul, through their drive, their generosity, their creativity, and their tireless dedication, have embodied so much of the greatness of Marsha, and I am in awe of each one of them. A brief logistical reminder is that we are streaming live today, and a recording will also be available in the archives here at Emerson. As we begin today's celebration, I want to take a moment of grounding us into this present moment, of taking some time to allow ourselves to fully arrive into the sacred space of honoring and celebrating Marsha that lies ahead of us this afternoon. Today, we will hear reflections and stories, words of gratitude and encouragement from some of the many individuals whose life Marsha touched. And a common thread through many of these stories is the way that Marsha's connection to her own spirituality and a deep sense of unwavering faith undergirded and encouraged her, especially in hardship and stress and uncertainty. Particularly on a day when I imagine many, if not all of us, may be shaken or feeling emotion due to recent news of violence, natural disaster, heartbreak, in the Middle East, Afghanistan, even reaching here perhaps into our own lives and into our own hearts, we need Marsha's reminder. I recently learned that one of Marsha's favorite verses from one of her favorite sacred texts is found in the book of Joshua in the Hebrew Bible, and it encourages us to be strong and courageous. Do not be frightened or dismayed, for God, or whatever is sacred and divine to you, is with you wherever you go. With those words of strength and courage and accompaniment in our minds and hearts, I invite you to join me now for a shared moment in silence, a moment to remember Marsha, to be strengthened by her memory and reminded of the power of community. Let us be in silence. Thank you. As you continue settling into this place and into this gathering, I invite you now to turn your attention to the screen for the song Amazing Grace, sung by Marsha's student, Catherine Parada, from the class of 2007.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved 'twas grace that taught my heart to fear, and grace my fears relieved. How precious did that grace appear, the hour I first believed. The Lord has promised good to me. His word my hope secures. He will my shield and portion be, as long as life endures.
Thank you, Catherine. It is now my honor to introduce our next two speakers, Emerson's president, Dr. Jay Bernhardt, and interim provost, Jan Roberts-Breslin. Before welcoming Dr. Bernhardt to the podium, I will introduce both of these speakers together. Dr. Jay Bernhardt is our 13th president here at Emerson College, who just began his tenure with us on June 1st, following his long and internationally recognized career in health communications. President Bernhardt most recently served as the Dean of Moody College of Communication at the University of Texas at Austin, and we are so glad that he is now here in Boston with us at Emerson. Following Dr. Bernhardt will be our interim provost, Jan Roberts-Breslin. Provost Roberts-Breslin is an independent media artist whose work has been broadcast on PBS and is the recipient of both national and international festival awards. She's the founder of our MFA in Media Art program and now serves our wider community in her role as interim provost at Emerson. We are so honored to have both of them with us today. So without further ado, Dr. Jay Bernhardt.
Good afternoon. On behalf of the students, faculty, and staff of Emerson College, it's my distinct honor to be with you today and to share some words with you in loving memory of Marsha Della Giustina. But first, I want to also recognize and thank the many people who organized this special and deeply meaningful event. So thank you to Satch, Sharon, Paul, Julie, along with the staff of our lovely Cutler Majestic Theater and many others. Let's thank them for their help making today possible. I also wish to acknowledge and thank the Department of Journalism at Emerson, which has a rich and storied history and a national reputation of excellence. I'm also incredibly grateful to the past and present leadership of the journalism department, and let's please thank them for their great work. And lastly, I wish to thank all of you for being here and coming together as a community today, in person and on the live stream, as we honor the accomplishments and share stories about someone who has left an indelible mark on our college and on the lives of the many people who were privileged to know her. Marsha passed just 2 weeks after I joined Emerson College, and I regret having not had the opportunity to talk to her, to meet her, and to learn from her, because from what I've heard, I would have learned a lot, and I would have really liked her. I understand she was tough, honest, ethical, and a real straight shooter. In other words, my kind of person. And I also understand that Marsha loved journalism, as do I. Without journalism, we would not have a free society, a functioning democracy, or the ability to hold truth to power. My good friend Dan Rather knows a thing or two about journalism and journalism education, and he's taught me a lot about journalism in the years that I've known him. He shared with me once, and I'll quote from Dan Rather, "The dream begins with a teacher who believes in you, who tugs and pushes and leads you to the next plateau, sometimes poking you with a sharp stick called truth." I'm not sure if Dan knew Marsha or Marsha knew Dan, but from what I've learned about her, I'm certain that she carried that pointy stick called truth and probably poked a few of us in the room a few times with it. There's no question that her legacy lives on here at Emerson and well beyond this campus. She was instrumental in the success of our journalism department, and her legacy lives on in the Emersonians whom she taught and whose successful careers she helped launch. And many of them are here with us today. She selflessly dedicated herself to Emerson College for more than 4 decades. And as a result, our college and our community, and dare I say our society, are all better because of it. And I too am deeply grateful. I wish to extend my continued condolences to Marsha's family, friends, and the many, many people whose lives she touched. Thank you for the opportunity to honor her memory today. It's now my pleasure to turn the program over to Interim Provost Jan Roberts-Breslin. Thank you.
Good afternoon. It's wonderful to see you all here today. Faculty are the lifeblood of our college. They share their knowledge, they mentor and inspire their students, they form lasting connections. We value and appreciate all of our faculty, but some faculty members astound us with their dedication, their commitment to the success of their students, and their willingness to share their advice and encouragement. Marsha was truly one of those educators. When I came to Emerson in 1990, Marsha and I were both teaching in the Division of Mass Communication, which at the time included both journalism and film and television production. I saw firsthand how she encouraged her students, preparing them for the competitive world of broadcasting and continuing to mentor and advise them throughout their careers. Her advice was plentiful and certain. For over 40 years, and even after her retirement, her dedication never faltered. She was complimentary when it was earned, but wouldn't hesitate to be constructive when she felt it was warranted. She was invested in the success of her students and impacted so many, many careers and lives. Thank you to those who have come today to share and witness her amazing legacy. And I now invite Paul Niwa, Associate Professor of Journalism, to address you. Thank you.
I'm Paul Niwa, and I was Marsha's colleague for 22 years, and I think she would have been really delighted to see all of you. On behalf of the journalism department, I want to thank Joanne and her family for lending Marsha to us for 4 decades and giving us this opportunity to express how much your sister and aunt and cousin meant to the Emerson community. Marsha created the broadcast journalism program, and everything that makes Emerson journalism distinctive comes from Marsha. The reason why Emerson journalists go to the Oscars, the Red Sox spring training, the Iowa caucuses, and all the other trips is because Marsha founded SPJ and RTDNA. The reason why Emerson journalists dominate the AP RTDNA regional awards and are often competitive at the national level is because of her merciless red pen. The reason why virtually every New England newsroom has an Emersonian is because she spent her summers on the phone making sure that every graduate who wanted a job in journalism found one. Marsha served on just about every committee on campus and negotiated 2 union contracts on behalf of her colleagues. Even when she wasn't chair, she was the one getting work done. Marsha was responsible for writing the cases that helped dozens of junior faculty earn tenure, and I'm one of those, and I'm very grateful to her. Over the years, I've asked her advice, for her advice many times, and Marsha had strong opinions. Sometimes we disagreed, but we prayed together, and I miss her fellowship and the strength she summoned for me. I love Marsha for how she helped me raise my 2 kids. She sent Luke and Mickey birthday cards every year, devotional diaries every Christmas, and every night when they say their prayers, they hold the olive wood crosses she gave them. But I know that my kids are not the only ones who were special to Marsha. Her heart was so big, so generous, and many of you know exactly what I'm talking about. Marsha was there when you got married. She called you when your mother was sick. She sent you cards with lots of X's and O's when you started a new job. Marsha cheered for you because she loved you, her students, Emerson alumni. And you have made Emerson journalism what Marsha always hoped it would be. Marsha was proud of your accomplishments and the goodness you have spread off campus. Marsha loved you, and your journalism department hopes that you will keep returning to us to keep us rooted to what Marsha started for all of us. I'd like to ask Joanne Della Giustina, Marsha's sister, to come up and say a few words. We met for the first time just a moment ago, but I feel like we've known each other for years.
Yeah, thank you, Paul. I've known Paul and his children, actually, it was amazing, their cards, and as Paul said, that they would pray for Marsha, she would pray for them. But I wanted to speak briefly, but I wanted to thank everybody for coming. Many of you I know, because I sometimes, when Marsha would take her trips, I would go and take some time off from work and go and visit. I remember the DC trip. I remember a number of the trips. So some of you I know. And Marsha would speak a lot. And, I mean, I knew a lot about, I was going to say students, but it's not just that she would talk about. A whole number of you became her sons and daughters. I can't even begin to, I can't overestimate or overemphasize how close she felt to a whole number of you. So whether I had met you in person, or like Paul, have not met him in person, but felt like I really knew him. And her legacy lives through all of you. But I did want to talk a little bit about a legacy that probably most of you don't know about. In 1972, Marsha was married, and she kept her own name. And then she went to go to vote, and they would not let her vote because she didn't have her husband's name. She contacted some state legislators, and it took a few years, but eventually Massachusetts passed a law that today there is a law that says when a woman gets married, she can take whatever name she wants to take. And that was Marsha singularly, I mean, with legislators, but there wasn't a movement or anything else, and it was important. So there are other ways in terms of legacy, but so many of you, and I've heard from a lot of you as well about, being in your job on air or not on air and hearing Marsha's voice and things like that. So I want to thank you all for your love for her and for my family. And I just ask that you carry on the legacy, which would be the best, that's the best gift. So thank you. Thank you.
Also want to thank Marsha Della Giustina, the head of the department, for all of her advice.
I'd also like to thank Marsha Della Giustina for her support and her dedication to this program. And a special thanks to Marsha Della Giustina, who is our teacher and a good one at that.
I'd like to also thank Dr. Marsha Della Giustina.
I'd just like to say thank you to everyone that helped me along. Marsha.
Marsha Della Giustina, you have been the greatest.
Marsha Della Giustina.
And my other mother and mentor, Marsha Della Giustina. Thank you for staying on my back and pushing me to be the best I can be. Thank you for teaching me a lot about the business and about myself.
Marsha Della Giustina.
Marsha Della Giustina.
And Marsha Della Giustina, when they said, who would you like to give the award? And I said, Marsha, because she was, one of the greatest teachers I've ever had in my life.
And I really would not be up on this stage if it were not for that woman. I would not be sitting on that anchor desk at the news leader if it was not for that woman, Dr. Marsha Della Giustina. I would not be on this stage right now if it were not for Marsha Della Giustina. Can we, if you're able, let's just stand and let's just hear it from Marsha, because we're all connected to her. Please clap. Please give her the honor of being that person who impacted each and every one of us in her very unique Marsha way. Thank you. Thank you. Oh boy. Can I go to the other mic? Is that okay, you guys? Hi, everybody. I love that we're here. I feel really tall. Do I look really tall? What's better? Tall? All right, we'll go tall. I'm Maria Stefanos, and Marsha would make me say that I am a news anchor reporter at the television station she got her start at, the great WCVB Channel 5. And I've been blessed, and she would make me say that as well. Oh boy, did she make me say a lot of things. To have about 30 years in this business. And I know, as I look out at all of you, that I am not alone in saying that. This would not have happened without Marsha. From the moment I met her in the late 80s, go ahead and do the math, I don't care. Before she died, Marsha guided me to live my dream. Cut your hair. Stop talking so fast. Why do you look so sick on TV? I just called Jerry Wardwell, who's our assistant news director at CVB. I told him your eyes are sunken and you need time off. She did. And then let's fast forward. A month before Marsha died, these were the texts I was getting. I need you to autograph the thing she would have us all do. I need you to autograph a picture to Melissa. That's the rehab that Marsha was at the LaSalle house. Joanna and I loved your gray suit. So professional, so great. She was in the rehab, and I was telling her I was interviewing these 10 executive women from the Red Sox. And I said, give me some, what do you think? How am I gonna get 10 women? How am I gonna shove it all in 3 minutes and 30 seconds? And she talked me through it, which was amazing. And she said, this is a national story. It was not a national story. She told me I should call ABC and ESPN right now and tell them that I'm interviewing these 10 women. She told me I should do an hour special. She said, every single bit of things that you did with this interview, it all needs to go on the web, every single bit of it. And she really had the enthusiasm that she had from the first moment I met her. You know, when I started at Emerson, and Marsha was my teacher and I was a graduate student, and I went to school with so many of you, I thought, who is this woman? I mean, honestly, and I had never met anybody like that. And now, all these years later, I stand here and say to you, at almost 60 years old, this is a woman who taught me from the beginning until the very end of her life. And I can't thank her enough for that. When my mother died, when my father died, and I know that there are people here in this room who got the same kindness from Marsha. She never forgot. Random texts. Your mother would be, she's looking, your mama, she used to say, because that's what she called her mother, is looking down and would be so proud. Then one of my last texts from Marsha, my sister ordered me 2 pairs of shoes. One pair is the wrong size. I need you to pick them up and donate them. So when I went there, I did bring her all the things that she asked me for, all the things. Wipes, you know, lip stuff, all these things. I forgot the shoes. So I think Howard, you picked up the shoes, Howard Shulkin, yes? Can you clap if you did? Yeah, you didn't? You did. She told me you did, okay? That's what she said. Then thank you, Howard. Thank you for getting the shoes that I forgot to get. So that is so classic Marsha, right into the end, believing in us, definitely telling us what to do, giving back to everybody, and making sure that we got things right. That was the Emerson way. That was the Marsha way. I bring Marsha with me every damn day I'm sitting on that anchor desk. I bring her with me to every interview, when I write, when I wear my earrings. And yes, I put the biggest pair on I could find, because she never liked when I wore big earrings. She didn't like, I can't even tell you, my list is long from Marsha, but she made me better. She made all of us better. And before we get this whole thing started, I just want to say, seeing all of you here from all the different parts, and this is not about me, this is about Marsha, it's seeing Ted Canova, who hired me from my first job, and then Bob Borden, Sharman Skiddy, and Mike Bodette, and Deb Fountain, and all the people who I've worked with through my life, and you realize the constant thread through all of it. And now, Angel, I'm working with you, and I love you, and Ariel, and and Ross, and everybody. The constant thread was Marsha, working her magic, the Emerson way. You never forget. You always lift up the Emerson people. Wow. I love it. I'm so blessed. Matt Ellis taught me how to write scripts. That's terrible. Do this again. I think about all the people in this room, and I know that the foundation of all of us and what it is we do and who it is we are as journalists and as human beings was Marsha Della Giustina. Yes, Marsha's saying in my ear, keep it brief, stop talking, so I will. Let's begin with the Marsha Show. We begin with WCVB memories from the 1970s. It was Donna Hennessy, and I know you're here, and she's still a director at Channel 5. I love you, Donna. And Marsha's producer and friend, Howard Shulkin.
I'm Howard Shulkin. I knew Marsha before she was a legend in Emerson. It was the early 1970s. I had just been named producer of the first hour-long morning newscast in Boston at WCVB, and she was my writer. We became fast friends in the newsroom over the sounds of the clacking AP and UPI teletype machines before they were computerized and the police radios. We shared a lot of interests, particularly the Red Sox. I would say Marsha loved the Red Sox. She was particularly interested in one player in the 1970s, Butch Hobson, Check it up on the internet. I may have had one influence on Marsha in all the time we were together at WCVB, and that was my editing. I was known to edit her copy fairly regularly, and I suspect she did that for her students at Emerson as well. One day, I noticed Marsha was bringing an umbrella to the newsroom, even though it wasn't raining. I asked her why she did it. She said it was a weapon for her as she traveled early in the morning. As far as I know, she never had to use it as a weapon. She left a few years before I did at WCVB, and while she was gone, she was not forgotten by me. I would be in touch with her periodically about her students, about where her students were now working, about WBEN, and a few years ago, she invited me to join a webinar on volunteerism and helping people. That would be just like Marsha, helping people. She would always tell me when we'd speak that she was praying for me and my family, and I wasn't always sure why, but I appreciated it. Now it's time for us to pray for Marsha's peace. Her memory will live on for many years on all the lives she affected. God bless you, Marsha.
Marsha broke a lot of glass ceilings with that umbrella, and she taught all of us how to do that. So that includes Sierra Speller, who obviously learned from Marsha very well. We were all together at the cemetery in Agawam. It was a beautiful day. And we were saying goodbye to our mentor and friend, and Sierra was there. She raced back to the newsroom, and she turned this great tribute.
A homecoming today for a beloved journalist and educator, responsible for inspiring thousands in TV news, both near and far. Dr. Marsha Della Giustina was laid to rest in her hometown of Agawam August 1st, following a brief illness. Marsha, as she was lovingly called by so many, was a graduate of Agawam High School, Russell Sage College, and Boston University, and is being remembered as a trailblazing pioneer for women in media. Before teaching at Emerson College in Boston for more than 4 decades, where she created the undergraduate broadcast journalism program and first journalism master's program, Marsha taught English in both Agawam and Westfield and went on to break glass ceilings as the first female news producer in Boston. But it was at Emerson College where thousands of students were personally touched by Marsha's grace and grit, attributing their success to time spent in and out of the classroom with her, including myself. Assume nothing, trust no one, and follow the money, she would often say, and it stuck. Her witty one-liners were one of the many qualities that made Marsha so memorable. A teacher, but most importantly, a mentor and a remarkable friend. She loved her students, and she loved them hard. She was tough, and it prepared us all for the real world. But most importantly, she was just, and she was proud. Her undivided attention and commitment paid off for generations to come. A celebration of Marsha's life will take place in Boston this October. A GoFundMe for an RTDNA Foundation endowed scholarship in Marsha's memory has also been created. You can find this information and more on Marsha on WWLP.com. Professor Emeritus Della Giustina was 76 years old. There simply isn't enough time in any given newscast to cover all of Marsha's accolades and accomplishments. But one word that sums her up is legendary. I was fortunate enough to graduate with my master's in 2017, spending 2 years with Marsha. From reporting at the Oscars to the Murrows, a presidential inauguration, and landing my first TV gig at her hometown station, 22 News. Marsha was there every step of the way, encouraging and pushing my limits. She saw something in me that helped me to believe in myself, and I will forever be grateful.
That was beautiful. Just so you know, I know you're looking at the program. I'm not going to introduce everybody, so don't you worry. I'm going to introduce a couple people here and there. We're going to go videos back to back. Come on now. Did you think? I know you did. I did too. Let's go back to the beginning of Marsha's days at Emerson, her dearest friend and an amazing professor herself, I know. I had her, I think in the early 90s, Claire Andrade Watkins. Let's watch.
Hello, my name is Claire Andrade Watkins. I am a professor of Media and Africana Studies in the Marlborough Institute for Liberal Arts and Interdisciplinary Studies, a 2023 visiting scholar at the Ruth J. Simmons Center for the Study of Slavery and Justice, Brown University, the president of Spia Media Productions, and the founding director of the Tockwatton Fox Point Cape Verdean Heritage Place project. Most importantly, I am here because of Marsha. She was the chair of the 1982 Department of Mass Communications Search Committee that hired me for a tenure-track position. I remember my niece knocking during the interview in the second-floor seminar room at 128 Beacon Street. There were two of us at that interview. My daughter, born during the 1983 winter break, was peeking out through my belly button. Boston was a three-station powerhouse in those days: WBC, WCVB, and WNAC. At Emerson, MC, MassComm reflected the industry status quo, the men of communication. Fortunately for Emerson, MC also meant Marsha of communication. She was a force of nature that shattered the glass ceiling for women in the industry, bringing all that WCVB expertise, talent, and grit to us at Emerson. Television, radio, journalism, and film were the four departments of MassComm. We had maybe 15 full-time faculty members at the time, and we were all packed into the brownstones at 126, 128, and 130 Beacon Street. Vision a 7-month pregnant woman entering her office, which was literally a butler's closet that had 2 desks squeezed into it, so that when I entered the office, my colleague who had the desk near the door had to get out and leave the butler closet so I can kind of sidle in past the desk to get to mine. Our state-of-the-art office equipment included a coveted IBM Selectric typewriter on a rolling cart shared by faculty. I remember the film stockroom on the 4th floor of 126 and the 8mm editing room down the hall, where our AC, when it was hot, was to open the door to the fire escape. And tucked into a tiny corner of the first floor of 130 Beacon was Marsha. After Bob Hoyt joined her in the journalism department, they became a power duo of legend, launching generations of Emersonians into every market in the country. All you had to do was say Marsha and knock on the door. How do you describe Marsha? Indefatigable, demanding, exemplary, a teacher, mentor, and colleague. But most importantly, Marsha, or my mush, was my friend, my sister from another mother. She was always there through thick and thin, up and down, for me and Callie. When I entered the room on my last visit to see her in the ICU, she was sedated with tubes, and deep in there, you knew she was there. I said, "Moosh, it's me, Claire." She lifted her hand toward me, and I sat quietly holding her hand. I told Vic Silvestri, a beloved friend to both me and Marsha, also a legendary OG professor emeritus, that I couldn't cry. He said, "Claire, a loss that deep is profound, and a piece of you also dies. Hey, Moosh, you are a treasure of my heart, a gift to me and all who have been honored to be part of your village at Emerson. I love you."
Hello, I'm Gregory Payne, Chair of Communication Studies. When I came to Emerson in 1984, I met a distinctive force at the Iowa caucuses, and that was Marsha Della Giustina. I had heard about Marsha, but she was over at MassComm by the wall that I never could find out exactly what it was because it looked more like a stoop. But we came together in Iowa, and we discovered one thing, that while the other Big Ten schools, Iowa, Illinois, Northwestern, their students were in the back of the room, we discovered that the Emerson students were down by the podium talking to Walter Mondale, Gary Hart, Jesse Jackson, and others. And at that time, we both understood we were blessed to have students like all of you here tonight at Emerson. Marsha understood, ate, slept, and breathed Emerson. She understood and appreciated our unique brand. And Jay, Marsha would have loved your description of Emerson as an academic community and culture of unicorns. Marsha's understanding, coupled with her devotion and passion for teaching and her abiding emphasis on critical thinking, trained generations of Emersonians with the goal of not to just get a job, but like the Salcedos, to embrace leadership, oftentimes transformational in their respective industries, whether it be in Boston, Bahrain, or Bangkok. Marsha's pedagogical perspective was to be the very best, just like Tina Turner, to be the best mentor, to make sure Teddy Roosevelt would say that her students were prepared to be active agents in life's arena, battling against ignorance, dis and misinformation, and reminding us that in today's era of celebrity and spectacle, Marsha prodded all of us to get beyond the smoke and mirrors and to find the essence of the real story. To me, Marsha epitomized the deliberative and ethical ideals of Aristotle. She implored all of us, as Aristotle wrote, to discover all the available means of persuasion. Now that's all the available means of persuasion, and that sometimes included, as Maria has said, the color of a blouse, a shirt or tie for Jean Levanchi, or the need, as someone would say, remembering Ken Cornell, to work on your glottal fry in your broadcast. The Marsha candid conversation on fashion and the appropriateness of appearance or voice is one that many of us experienced, including Emerson's favorite pollster, America's favorite pollster, Spencer Kimball, because she prepped him, told him what tie and colors. And as Marsha said, as Maria said, even in the latter days, she was giving her advice. What was exciting about Marsha is even after she retired, she continued on. And she and Joanne, working with the sports comm and journalism students, began the sports dialogues. And there on Zoom, each and every week, she would connect her iconic people from around the world to professors, young freshmen, and staffers, hundreds of people part of Marsha's mafia. I think for all of us, as we think about how Marsha enhanced the legacy of Emerson College as that unique unicorn, I'm reminded of the words of Tennyson. Marsha, we will remember you by living pure, speaking true, and righting wrong. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Carlton Cole, class of 1980, and I'm very happy to be one of Marsha's first students. I met Marsha in the mid-70s, 1976 is when I enrolled. And at the time, she was still working the overnight at WCVB, which meant that she worked an entire shift, did the program, and then came to 130 Beacon to meet her students. I want to talk about a couple words. One is preparation. Well, if you remember Broadcast Journalism 1, every year, every class, we had a news events quiz, which meant that if you didn't read the Boston Globe or the Herald or listen to the radio or television, if you got into class, it was a 100 or a 0. We all know about a red pen. But the point was, she was trying to make sure that we were prepared journalists each and every day. The second word is competition. Did you ever know that Marsha was a competitor? She did not want to get beat on a story. But I best describe her competition. It was probably the early 1980s, spring of 1980. She decided that we needed to play a softball game against EIV, Emerson Independent Video. Well, for me, that was wonderful because I played baseball all the way as a kid, all 4 years at Emerson, go Lions. And so I wanted to play the softball game. Well, we played at the Diamond that's off the Charles River across from Mass General. I'm sure you've passed it many times on Starro Drive if you've driven near the river. And when I got there that morning, you would have thought it was Game 7 at Fenway Park. Marsha was really into it. She didn't want it just to win, but to win big. And we did. But I say that because it was her competitive nature that drove us. Between my junior and senior year, she was the one that had the prod behind me. And I wrote a letter to the NPR station in Philadelphia saying, look, I'm a work study student. Hire me, I don't cost much. And turns out I was welcomed by Bill Siemering, who was one of the founders of All Things Considered. What a summer. Well, I took my best work, and with Marsha's prodding, we submitted it to SBJ, what back then it was called Sigma Delta Chi, and my piece won second place. Well, that following year, my senior year, I was given a internship at WGBH. And again, I was able to submit one of the pieces that I worked for WGBH to SBJ. And I might add, we didn't even have a chapter on campus. And that piece won gold. It was first place. And it was just one of the first, but a number of awards that would be honored by Marsha's journalism program. And I say that about preparation and competition because throughout my 26-year career at KHOU-TV in Houston, at times I became the organizer and leader of the internship program. And let me tell you, we got some good students. They were from those name brand universities, Columbia, Northwestern, Missouri, University of Texas. And I always had Marsha just over my shoulder, asking questions she would ask first-year students. Okay, name the 9 U.S. Supreme Court justices. Who's in George Bush's cabinet? Down in Houston, give me the 9 people who start for the Houston Astros. Remember, if you're a woman, you better learn about sports. If you're a guy, you better learn about fashion. That was Marsha. The blank looks that I got from those students, and these are really good students, was all about the preparation. We came prepared. We were work ready. And it's something I've never forgotten. Anytime someone submitted a resume that I knew it had Emerson College, I obviously would call Marsha and find out. We knew that they were good hires. I am very proud to be a graduate of Emerson College. But more than that, I am so thrilled and happy to be one of Marsha Della Giustina's students. Thank you.
That was beautiful. All right, Jerry Wardwell is a news legend. It's not because he's my boss, maybe a little bit, but it's because he earned it. He helps run our newsroom. He makes all the big decisions at Channel 5. This is a 24/7 job, but that never stopped him from calling Marsha every day on the way home from work, right until the end. And he would take those calls where she'd tell him how terrible I looked and that I needed a day off, which I wasn't sorry about, because we could all use a day off. Jerry had a last-minute conflict, but he just texted me this, and I was able to print it out. And I want to read you just a couple of quick things. Jerry Wardwell, class of 1980. He said, Marsha always used to love to introduce me by saying, this is Jerry Wardwell, class of 80. And Marsha would pause, as only Marsha could do. I went to both of his weddings, which is really a good line. It is. Jerry said, Jerry considered dropping her BJ class after one class when Marsha asked, and I know you guys all know this, who likes weekends? Show of hands. Who likes holidays? Thanksgiving, Christmas? Show of hands. Who likes going out to lunch and dinner? Show of hands. Who likes making family plans? Show of hands. Marsha then said, put all that on the back burner because that's not going to be your life. And boy, was she not kidding. Why did we do this again? Anyway, she told us then. Jerry said he went back to class and is still in the business and has worked all over the country 46 years after that day in class in the top floor of 130 Beacon Street. Hold on, there's one more story. He texted me, he said, "Oh, I forgot to put this in. I was getting too long." Which, that wasn't too long. Did you think that was too long? I did cut out one story. Sorry, Jerry, I know you're watching. And I'm just gonna try to get through this. She was a spiritual rock when my dad died suddenly during my junior year and talked me through the rest of the semester. She took special interest when I don't think any other professors even noticed that I was out of class. Marsha had that empathy. She knew how important our families were to us. And in the spirit of Marsha, the peace lily I have in my office, she sent me when my mom died 4 years ago. I think of Marsha and my mom every time I look at it. So that's from Jerry. It's beautiful. It's beautiful. Marsha never forgot all the cards and the plants, and you all have the same stories. All right, let's get this thing going. Don't worry, I'm not going to interrupt. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Now, we've got a lot of videos coming up. The beginning, the first one, is from someone who I love calling my friend, and someone who is a legend himself in this business, the great Gene Levanchi.
25, Emerson College class of 1986. And yes, I am painfully aware of how long ago that really was. But back in the great 80s, Emerson College started to develop the reputation as having one of the best broadcast journalism programs in the entire country, and that was thanks to Marsha Della Giustina. She ran a tight ship. She was tough. She was demanding, incredibly smart. Of course, she was a doctor after all, and she pushed you to be the best you could be every single day. And it's a good thing that she was, because when we got out there and we found out that newsrooms around the country were not exactly Club Med, but she instilled in us the work ethic, the discipline, and the journalistic integrity we needed to succeed. Can't thank her enough for helping us build that foundation. And while she was tough and we needed that, outside of class she was a softie. She was always there to lend a hand, lend an ear, help you in any way possible. In fact, I always appreciated the encouraging emails that she would send. And at the end of every one of those emails, she would mark it Marsha XOXO. And to me, that was kind of like her sign of Zorro that always stayed with you. But how do you thank the person that gave you that foundation to have a long and sustained career and also to be a friend for life? She truly was one of a kind. There will never, ever be another Marsha Della Giustina. And I know I'm really going to miss her.
Hi, everyone. I'm David Wade, news anchor at WBZ-TV, Channel 4 here in Boston. Emerson College graduate, class of, well, let's just say class of 2015. That works for me. I also teach TV reporting here in the fall semester. And you know, whenever I tell someone I'm an Emerson grad, they always say the same thing, without fail. Did you have Marsha? Marsha. One word. Like Madonna or Oprah. Did you have Marsha? Well, yes, I did have Marsha, and I am a much better journalist because of it. When I was a senior, back when Emerson was on Beacon Street, Marsha had this little office in the journalism department. It was packed wall to wall with books and papers, definitely a fire hazard. But it was the place where things got done. It was not a place for the faint of heart. You see, if you went by there was a very good chance that Marsha was going to ask you what you were doing to get that first TV job. Did you get your resume tape done? Have you called any news directors? Do you have a blue blazer? Did you get a business card? Actually, I did get those business cards. They actually had a little clip art square television in the corner. My parents said it looked like I was a TV repairman. Anyway, she gave me a tip about a station hiring in Kingston, New York, and helped me to get that first job. Throughout the years, she would email me all the time. So encouraging, so full of pride. She would pass along some really, really nice comments, and sometimes a couple of things that could be done better. But I look back at them recently, and I noticed she always ended the emails with X's and O's, hugs and kisses. Her students were her world, and we were all better for it. Marsha. One word, one truly incredible woman. one who we will all miss.
I'm Mario Florio, Sunrise anchor for NBC 10 in Rhode Island, and I would not be here, literally, if it wasn't for Marsha Della Giustina. When the news director at the time, a fellow Emersonian, had an opening for a part-time reporter, he, like so many in this industry, turned to Marsha, and she recommended a recent grad who was working for a small cable outlet in Brockton, Massachusetts. Needless to say, I got the job because that's how it worked. Marsha's word was gold in the world of broadcast journalism. Her recommendation, a stamp of approval that was indelible. If you were a product of the Emerson College Broadcast Journalism Program and a student of the Marsha Della Giustina, you were a cut above the rest. And if you put in the time and work and remembered everything Marsha taught you, your success was all but guaranteed. I still have so many memories of walking into her office with her sitting behind her desk, by bringing her Mrs. Smith's banana cream and coconut cream pies because she loved them. She called me her son, and she was indeed my second mother, especially when my own mom fell ill and it was taking its toll. And like any good mom, she would sometimes yell at you, "What were you thinking? Change your name. You'll never get a job with a name that rhymes." I think that was the one piece of advice I didn't take from her. But everything she said and did for you was because she cared and truly loved you. She loved all of her students like they were her own, and we were. What professor would let you drive to her house in Arlington late at night so you could drop off your practicum paper before the deadline? And I'll never forget the annual Washington, D.C. trip, her busting into our hotel room to yell at me, Mike Bodette, and Maria Stefanos because boys were not supposed to be sharing a room with the girls. Her faith was strong and guided the life she lived, and oh, what a life, one that we are all better for having been a part of. Marsha, I'm sure you're telling the angels in heaven to change their outfits and cut their hair as only you can. Mentor, teacher, mother, friend. You'll always be loved and never forgotten.
Hi, everyone. On behalf of the Marsha Tribute Planning Team, thank you all so much for being here. I met Marsha over 20 years ago when I was responsible for the oversight of Emerson student organizations. Marsha and Satch were the power team advisor duo to RTDNA and WEBN. Before meeting her, I had heard that Marsha could be maybe a little bit of a handful. However, as I got to know her, I understood that her every action was because of her unwavering commitment to her students, their compelling stories, and their professional paths. For she was not only their advisor, she was a mentor, a champion, an advocate, and for many, she became family. As an educator, Marsha always pushed her students beyond their self-made limits, and in any given interaction with her could be at the same time equal parts full of admiration, frustration, and gratitude. I would constantly hear from students, "Do you know what Marsha said to me today?" I didn't need to ask which Marsha it was. To which I responded, "Well, do you think that she was wrong?" And invariably, I'd get the exasperated, "Well, no." And Marsha was generous with her knowledge, her network, her time, her advice, and that's how she showed us that we could reach our greatest potentials. And she always loved sharing her students' achievements with me, both big and small, and you were always her students, regardless of what year you graduated or where in the world you were. Even after she retired, she made sure to tell me about all of your amazing work so that I could share the news with others at the college. Marsha would often ask my advice on navigating administrative challenges and the nuances of working with this new generation of college students. And I can share many stories, but one I fondly remember was a conversation we had when ride shares first came onto the scene. And the RTDNA and WEBN students wanted to use them when they were traveling. Marsha would not hear of it. How could they get into just some random person's cars? Traditional taxis, so much safer. And she wanted to know what my opinion was on that subject. Well, together we worked to find a harmonious balance between her nurturing instincts and empowering students to gain wisdom from their lived experiences. I was grateful that Marsha often sought and took my advice. She would tell me that when it came to RTDNA and WEBN, I was her boss and the best boss she ever could have had. But let's be honest, we all know who the boss was in that relationship. In 2012, Marsha was recognized as Emerson College's Advisor of the Year for her work with RTDNA and WEBN. And the photo that you see of Marsha on today's program and in her obit was taken that night. And I think we can all agree that she never looked more radiant. Wynne Harrison presented Marsha with the award that night, and in her speech highlighted Marsha's long-standing tradition of providing her students with once-in-a-lifetime opportunities. You've heard about covering the presidential primaries, the debates, the caucuses, Academy Awards, spring training, Emmys, Oscars, Murrow Awards, SPJ, EIJ, and so on. Well, that night, Marsha was, in my experience at least, for the first time, momentarily speechless. Momentarily. Then she proceeded to scold me about how could I possibly have let her be recognized with this award when there were so many other worthy colleagues. Well, luckily and graciously, she accepted the award, uplifting her students as being her primary influence in doing her very best work. And she always looked back on that night with just such pride and joy. Much like the whirlwind pace of news itself, Marsha always seemed to move faster than the speed of light, and I lovingly called her Hurricane Marsha. And I let that sit in for a moment. It works. She was passionate and strong-willed, intense and dynamic, a true force of nature, and one of a kind. And I am so grateful that we all got to experience the once-in-a-lifetime event known as Marsha, and that she knew just how much we all loved and appreciated her. So it is now my great pleasure to introduce a very important member of our Marsha Tribute Planning team by video, Satch.
Hi, I'm Jonathan Satriali, also known by my nickname Satch. I met Marsha in the early 90s as one of her technical students, but after several years in her classes, I became one of her journalists too.
And that's Marsha Della Giustina. She basically taught me BJ3 for 3 years, and I kind of got into it.
Like so many, I never lost touch with Marsha, and while working as a journalist in New York City, I was able to provide tours of my station for her students and help her network of recent grads get jobs. Marsha also pressed me into service to speak on an RTNDA panel on 9/11 coverage. But things really got going when we started working together at Emerson in 2004. She finally had access to her very own journalism and technology professional a few doors down. We became a dynamic duo and propelled the journalism department and WEBN News to new heights. Traveling to the Iowa caucuses was her favorite trip.
Hey, any questions on the morning? Hello? Yes.
She would hold meetings at midnight because that was the only time her student news teams were all in the same place at the same time. It was all about the real-world pace and conditions of broadcast news. She practiced what she preached. Her efforts paid off. Her students got great access and experience. They were always prepared for their first job, and her phone calls and emails usually helped make that connection. We treated each other like family. She loved her Italian title of Nonna Marsha for my son Henry, and like so many of her former students, my family would do anything for her. Our world is much different without Marsha, and I miss her, and I love her. She is the patron saint of Emerson journalism, and she will be connected to her students forever. Although this is a sad time, I'm comforted by the fact that a legend never dies. Hi, I'm Jonathan Satriali, also.
When I was at Emerson College and couldn't afford voice lessons, Marsha Della Giustina hired me to do yard work at her home at $80 an hour. She knew I needed them, and that's what it cost when she insisted and then later arranged for private lessons with President Kennedy's voice coach. My name's Keith McGilvery. I was Marsha's graduate assistant, and today I co-anchor the Fox 61 Morning News here in Hartford. When an early news director told me I would never anchor at his station because I didn't look like an anchor, Marsha picked up the phone and called Anson Tebbets at WCX in Vermont, a former student of hers. She sold me as one of her journalists, and there I anchored the 5:30 and top-rated 11 p.m. news. I could go on. Marsha always called me a son she never had. As her graduate assistant, I learned our craft from her and watched a tough, compassionate, and fair professor move mountains for not only me, but countless other students with a passion for journalism. For more than 15 years, we stayed in touch. She critiqued my work regularly and helped me navigate an often difficult industry. She always shared in my challenges and many successes. Marsha was a woman of deep faith who often reminded me that I was in her prayers. I know today she's in a better place. I had the privilege of visiting with her at the ICU before she died. I held her hand and told her how she changed my life. I'm living a dream today that would not have been possible without her. Thank you, Marsha.
This is Morning Edition. I'm Brent Fox. If it wasn't for Marsha always pushing me to be my best, thousands of people wouldn't get to hear me say that every day.
Hi there, everybody. My name's Eddie Brill, and talking about my favorite teacher of all time. Everyone has their worst teacher and their best teacher. The worst teacher I ever had was Mean Mrs. Murphy in the 3rd grade in Brooklyn. She's a legend, Helen Murphy. People still to this day tell the tales of Mean Mrs. Murphy. But the best teacher I ever had, as you're all well aware, was Marsha Della Giustina. You know, not only was she an incredible teacher, incredible motivator, but also a great friend and a supporter of everything I did, including the arts, and made me feel, you know, like anything I wanted to do, I could do and get it done. I left the broadcast journalism world and continued on to comedy, and she was there every step of the way with me. When I received my Emerson Alumni Distinction Award, I knew without a doubt who was the person I wanted to hand it to me. Marsha would be mad at me for my grammar there, but I love her, and I think of her all the time. I miss her, and I'm happy that I'm able to say hello this way. And there's my fan. It's working. And speaking of fans, I'm a big fan of Marsha Della Giustina and everyone else who knows and has been lucky enough to be in the presence of the greatest teacher I've ever had in my life. Lots of love. Mwah.
We've heard this word a lot today, legacy. As I look around this theater and think about the legacy Marsha left behind, I'm reminded of a poem I read a few years ago called The Dash by Linda Ellis. By the way, Marsha, I had to research who wrote it because I know how much you hated sources without attribution. I read of a man who stood to speak at the funeral of a friend. He referred to the dates on her tombstone from the beginning to the end. He noted that first came the date of her birth, and he spoke of the following date with tears. But he said what mattered most of all was the dash between those years. For that dash represents all the time that she spent alive on earth, and now only those who loved her know what that little dash is worth. Marsha's dash is all of us. It's not just the glass ceiling she broke through in Boston television, the broadcast journalism program she gave birth to and nurtured over 40 years, Emerson's first Masters of Journalism program, her commitment to RTDNA and SBJ, WEBN, the dozens of AP awards and Emmys. Okay, maybe that's part of it. But it's so much more. How many of us remember the note we sent her when we got that first job? Yes, mine was a note. The internet wasn't invented yet. I remember chasing her down outside the bursar's office, begging her to let me into BJ even though I was only a sophomore. I remember the red pen she wielded like that sword, cutting even the best of us down to size. I remember when I used to serve on the board of advisors, and I used to come into town the day before so I could sit in her classes, and she let me help her critique the work of that next generation of journalists. We'd go out for dinner, and after asking about my wife and my kids, she'd fill me in on the latest department dirt and the administration's efforts, as she said, to gut the very essence of the BJ program. She always said that essence was to prepare us to get that first job, and all of the other jobs
we'd hold throughout our working lives. You see, Marsha knew that despite what Emerson was selling, we would not all grow up to be stars, that 9 out of 10 of us would be out of journalism and onto careers in marketing and public relations, sales and communications within 5 years of graduation. But she knew that if we knew how to write, how to tell a story in a concise and coherent way, how to stand up in front of a group of people and speak with confidence and intelligence and have the drive and perseverance to do it on our own, we would succeed in any profession. I remember one of those board of advisors meetings where the latest department chair, I can't remember who it was, came in and proudly talked about the college's plan to establish a working news desk at the state capitol. Wouldn't it be wonderful, he said, that students could work out of an actual working news bureau to cover state government? He looked at me for my nod of approval, and I told him that was the dumbest thing I'd ever heard in my life. I was channeling my inner Marsha. I reminded him that back in the day, we had a mini 6-week semester in January and February built around the idea of real-world, real-life experience. I told him we would walk into BJ at 8 in the morning. Marsha would be standing there saying, "You're covering the Capitol this morning, and you have 2 stories due by 4 o'clock. Go." There was no news desk to tell us. We'd walk up Beacon Hill, find our way to the press room, along with the rest of the Boston media, determine what was newsworthy that day, and figure out how to get the story. No one told us where to go, what time the press conference started, who to talk to. It was up to us. We were not entitled to anything, and Marsha never let us forget that. She had instilled in us the passion to succeed, the curiosity to figure it out, and the fear that we'd see that red pen over all our papers the next morning. Legacy. My greatest fear now that Marsha has left us is that the program she worked so hard to create will get watered down and become just another course of study where students will have everything they need presented to them on a silver platter, that Emerson will turn out a bunch of young people with a sense of entitlement, void of ambition and drive and curiosity and the will to succeed in whatever profession they choose to pursue. To all the professors and administrators in this theater today, I urge you with kindness, please don't tarnish Marsha's dash. For it matters not how much we own, the cars, the house, the cash. What matters is how we live and love and how we spend our dash. So when our eulogy is being read with life's actions to rehash, would you be proud of the things they say about how you spent your dash? Marsha, nobody spent it better. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us here today.
And I'm Amy Ketcherdunn. You know, I knew Marsha before I actually knew Marsha because she sent so many people to my first job at WAGM in Presque Isle, Maine.
And I, of course, was one of Marsha's students, and after I graduated in 1982, a lifelong friend.
That's right, and without Marsha, we never would have gotten together because we actually got engaged at 130 Beacon Street.
And as they say, we lived happily ever after, and all because of Marsha. Without her, the careers and our life together would not be possible.
Yeah, but the thing is, we didn't know that 130 Beacon Street was no longer Emerson College. In fact, it's private property.
So we were trespassing. But as I said, we lived happily ever after.
That's right. So thank you, Marsha.
Indeed.
What an honor to follow Mike and Amy, and especially Steve Shaw, who was kind of like the god when we went to school. Hi, I'm Ted Canova, class of 1983. Did you know Marsha was a master gardener? No, not in the way you're thinking. If that was the case, I wouldn't have been enlisted as a student into mowing her lawn. Somebody made $80 an hour. She made me do it for free. We didn't know That's crazy. Marsha's garden was the classroom, and all of us were her seeds and her seedlings. On the surface, she wasn't the type of gardener who spoke gently to her young plants. She didn't whisper to us. In fact, upon arrival to Emerson, most of us were scared to sign up for BJ1 writing class. We may not have been able to pronounce her last name, but we heard the whispers that Marsha was tough and blunt. Like the time she entered our classroom at the end of 130 Beacon Street, slammed those big doors, placed a boombox on the desk, and blasted Eye of the Tiger. I swear we thought she was nuts that she lost it. We didn't get it. We really were rolling our eyes, just thinking, what? And in reality, she just wanted us to be hungry. She also threatened that none of us would ever get a job in our lives. Or the time she gave me an F on those 40-page newscast analyses, all because I failed to put an apostrophe on the word Valentine's Day. Defiantly, I saw her after the class. I'm standing there in the front while everybody's leaving the class, and I went face-to-face, toe-to-toe with her, and I said, I don't care that you gave me an F. I know I learned something. But in my 30-year career in news, I never missed an apostrophe again. Talk about preparation. Or the time we went to D.C. on our journalism trip. Boy, those trips were great. And in the middle of the night, we borrowed the car, drove to Iwo Jima, saw things that 18 to 22-year-olds should probably never see at 4 in the morning, and then had to go face-to-face with Marsha in the morning. It was no wonder that she kept the car keys for night 2. You know, when she passed, we've all struggled. And part of me thought that Marsha, you know, we kind of put all the poetry behind who she was, but I started thinking, God, was Marsha one-dimensional, right? Was she just this fierce and relentless teacher? You know, we talk about the flower and the gardener, but did she have other dimensions? Because we saw her as students as just really being tough on us and wanting us to excel and get great jobs. But I realized that in the last couple of days, last couple of weeks, that obviously Marsha was much more than just one-dimensional. She was our mentor, resume reader, job coach, hair and wardrobe stylist. She used to force us back in the day to go to Filene's basement as groups to get a blazer. I think I got my first blazer, tweed or something. Steve Shaw with that trench coat, you know, we all had to get that tan trench coat. And Steve probably still has it. But Marsha was also a friend, and most importantly, she was a cheerleader. She was not one-dimensional. I think Marsha was also keenly curious of who we were outside of class, how we lived as students on the outside. Like the time she used to have us over to her house to watch sports, and she was watching us interact. Bob Ward, you know that. In return, we forced Marsha into our world to take her out of that one dimension. You know, from adding her to that softball team to taking her to the European in the North End for pizza. We hear about Marsha's faith. We all know about her faith. We couldn't say the word God. We couldn't even say the word damn. And she would get so ticked off at us. I don't know who else was there, but I think there were 2 other students who Marsha roped us into seeing Billy Graham one night at Boston University. Without knowing it at the time, the gardener in Marsha became the gardener in all of us, and it made her fiercely proud. Like the time that I was working at Channel 5, and I was writing for the 6 o'clock news one night, and Marsha, as a professor, was called in to freelance from time to time, and she and I were handing in scripts at the same time to that bin in front of the editor, and she just looked at me, and she just, I know she was marveling, like, my God, one of my students is doing the same exact job I'm doing at the same exact time. My favorite musician is Jackson Browne, and he has a song called For a Dancer. For a Dancer. And it reminds me of Marsha. It's about a dancer that we've all grown into from a seed somebody else has thrown. In this case, it was Marsha. In other cases, it was Fran Lasciotto, or maybe Fran Berger. The song also invites us to throw some seeds of our own. And I know we all have, whether we've pursued journalism or the arts, business or politics, family life or teaching. Marsha taught us all about gardening, from being a seed to then throwing the seeds to others. And for that, her legacy will never end. In those final days at the ICU, I would tell Marsha how much she meant to all of us. They say that hearing is the last thing to go. So she wasn't responsive at all. But I would tell her how much we loved her and appreciated her, whispering your name in her ear. And I know she heard, because on my last visit, she managed to pull the sheet off of her left arm and put her left hand into my hand. So we know that she was listening, and that we know that she knows that we all appreciate her and love her. So thank you, Marsha. We miss you, but you'll always be with us.
Hey, everybody. My name's Bob Ward. I'm a reporter at Boston 25, and class of 1983, which absolutely blows me away because that's 40 years ago. And I still feel like I'm about 25 years old, and when I see Marsha's face up here, I swear to God, she's standing right here. Thank you so much for inviting me to say a few words. I am deeply humbled and honored with this opportunity. Last week, when I started thinking about what I might want to say, I reached out to Satch and I said, you know, how long do I have? And he said, 2 minutes. And I said, what? And he said, okay, you can have 3. And I thought, this is like one of those impossible Marsha assignments, you know, just do it all, get it done, and move on, you know. But, you know, I might go over. I'm going to need a little more time because, you know, Marsha transformed my life. And how can you ever boil that down to 2 minutes? I just can't do it. When I say Marsha completely transformed my life, I really mean it. I got to Emerson as a freshman in 1979, and I probably didn't get into her program till junior year, which would have been about 1982. And if you had seen me back then, you would never think that I'd end up doing what I've been doing for so long. I had long hair, I had an accent, I was a little bit shy. You know, I was really, really in rough shape, I thought. I didn't know what I wanted to do. So I remember my first day in BJ1. That was, other people have described that unforgettable class, where basically what I took from that was, there are no stars. There are no stars. I remember her saying that over and over again. And I knew that I had run into a force of nature that day. There was also, Ted just mentioned that 1982 hit song, Eye of the Tiger. I kind of hated that song, but she played it for all of us, and there was a verse in it. I had to look this up last week. It said, face to face, out in the heat, hanging tough, staying hungry, they stack the odds till we make to the street for the kill with the skill to survive. That's what Marsha was instilling in all of us. Stay hungry, don't be complacent. If you want to succeed in journalism, always, always bring your A game, and you must always have the eye of the tiger. Over the next 2 years, Marsha worked with me, as you heard she did with everybody else, helped me develop, learn how to write broadcast style, cut my hair, finally bought some decent clothes, probably at Filene's basement, and of course, I lost that accent with Fran Lasciotto's help. But more than that, Marsha showed me how to use my voice to tell the stories of people who cannot speak for themselves. I graduated Emerson in 1983, and she helped me land that first job, and she was a powerful ally when I needed someone to lean on when things got tough and I didn't know how to handle it. Because of Marsha, I achieved my dream of working in Boston television. I am now in my 27th year at Boston 25. I've had a front row seat to so many incredible moments: the death of Pope John Paul II, the Red Sox reversing the curse. I was in St. Louis for that. Whitey Bulger, the Boston Marathon bombings, and so much more. I still have that song, Eye of the Tiger, swimming around in my head. It's really suited me well. If I was not on this path, I never would have met my wife, Gail, at WJR-TV in Providence, and my children, Rob and Jess, would never have been born. Marsha was so much more than a college professor. She was a life professor. In 2010, my dad died after a brief battle with cancer. And my story tonight, to hear other people say something very similar, it just warms my heart. Last week when I was researching this, I looked up some emails from Marsha, and she sent me one on the day after my father died. It read, "I am so sorry about your dad. I know how painful this is and how heartbroken you are. I am amazed that you have been able to reach out to all of us. It proves what an incredible son you are and what a fantastic dad you have had. I love the picture of the two of you and your dad wearing a Fox 25 jacket. He was so proud of you. He was a wonderful, loving father and grandfather. And the kicker, I am here for you anytime, any day, if you want to talk." That was Marsha. A lot of people showed up at my dad's wake a couple of days later. That line stretched out the door of the funeral home and down the street. I was shocked when I turned around and looked, and there was Marsha Della Giustina standing in front of me. She traveled from Arlington, Massachusetts, to Franklin, where I live, out by Foxborough, if you don't know where that is, and that's where the Patriots play. But that was over an hour-long drive, and I hadn't seen Marsha in a long time, although we kept in touch with each other. But she made it her purpose to get in her car and come to my father's wake. Over the years, we had a lot of long talks about our lives, about journalism, and my former classmates, and in every conversation, Marsha was enthusiastic and curious. Every now and then, I would get emails or cards with just a note telling me she was watching me and telling me how proud she was. Those conversations always lifted me. I'm so glad that in all those conversations, I told Marsha exactly what she meant to me and how she transformed my life. The world does not often give us the opportunity to say those things to the people who matter most, but I'm so glad that I had those conversations. The last time I physically saw Marsha, she honored me here at Emerson College with a Lifetime Achievement Award from the Broadcast Journalism Department. She was so excited about it. And she insisted that my family, my wife, my kids, and my mother would come out. And they were there, and it was such a thrill. But for me, the afternoon, it was a huge honor, but there was also another thrill of seeing Marsha's current students and seeing the fire that she lit in me way back in 1983 was still burning today. Our profession of journalism needs that, especially with the events that we've seen just in the last few days. This spring came the word that Marsha was hospitalized. The prognosis was grim. I met up at the hospital with Carol Yelverton and Ted Canova. Ted and I were classmates in 1983. Ted and I spent a few moments with Marsha. She was not conscious, but both of us, we held her hands. Ted was on one side, I was on the other. I told her I love her. I'll never forget all that she has done for me and for so many others. I don't know if she could hear me. I really don't think that she could. I don't think she was aware that I was even in the room. But I do know that she is here right now, and she knows exactly how we all feel. So wherever she is, I know she is glowing with happiness and peace. And Marsha, I will say it again. I love you, and thank you for everything. Thank you.
I'm the political reporter here at WCVB-TV in Boston. Marsha had a big impact on me. She was smart, as you know, so respected and so tough. And I think that's really because she wanted us all to be prepared for what we'd face out there. Over the years, we kept in touch. And when I introduced her to my husband, Scott, who's also a journalist and who went to Syracuse, she warmly welcomed him into the Emerson fold. She watched our weekly political show. She'd send me advice and tips, and I welcomed it all. She cared so deeply for her students, and she wanted us all to succeed. Now, from time to time, she would send me thoughtful cards, uplifting notes, and she made me smile a lot more than she probably knew. Someone told me a long time ago, when you live a life of purpose, you leave a legacy. And Marsha has done that. I'll miss her.
I'm Dana Rosengard, news director here at Fox 61 in Hartford, Connecticut. 30 years ago, I was a rookie college professor at Linden State College in Vermont. That's when and how I met Marsha. We were colleagues. Over many years, she would share tips and tricks with me to get the best and most out of my students, many more than I shared with her. We had some laughs, sharing stories. Yes, we did. Years later, I was teaching at Suffolk University in Boston. It didn't take long for Marsha to reach out and convince me to walk up and over Beacon Hill a night or two a week to teach in Walker 628. I think it was a bit full circle for her to bring me under her legend umbrella. I'm so glad she did, and so glad I could call her a friend, and call myself a de facto member of the Marsha gang and legacy. I hope she's resting in peace, and whatever editing she is doing now isn't too heavy a lift. May peace be with you all.
I wanted to wear this red suit because I bought this suit during my very first course with Marsha, because she always told us it was important to dress for the job you want and to be dressed properly for the assignment. And I'll always remember one day I was in Marsha's class, it was pretty early on, but there was a shooting and a chase that broke out in Chinatown. A bunch of us jumped up to go and cover it. And she says, whoa, 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 wait a minute, Catherine, not so fast. You're wearing jeans. You can't go out there and cover it. You're not dressed professionally. And I was really bummed, but thankfully I had a coat that covered me down to the knee. So I grabbed that, I put it on, I ran out the door, and she didn't say anything further. But from that day on, I've always been ready for every assignment. And I do credit Marsha for my closet on wheels, as my family likes to call my car. And I also wore this suit because it reminds me of all the RTNDA conferences that Marsha worked so hard to organize and to make sure her students were able to attend so we could network and have our reels looked at and be able to do demo live shots, things like that. And I'll always remember how she organized taking a group of us to RTNDA in Vegas, and I wanted so badly to go. And of course we had to sign off on this whole book of rules that Marsha had put together about how we were going to conduct ourselves and how we were going to dress when we were out there in Vegas. And that wasn't a problem. However, I was terrified of flying. That wasn't a roadblock for Marsha. You know, I was an adult. Maybe most professors wouldn't have been so apt to do this, but Marsha made sure she coordinated flights with me. We sat side by side. She kept me very busy planning coverage for WEBN during that whole flight, so it wasn't a problem. And you know, throughout my life, Marsha has always been an advocate and a mentor and a support, and not just for my career, but just for, you know, going through life as I got married and had children and reached all those milestones, and I'll definitely never forget that. And after she poured so much of herself into all of us, I hope she's finally at peace and resting.
Good afternoon. My name is Spencer Kimball. I'm the director here at Emerson College Polling, and I had the chance to meet Marsha as well in Iowa. You know, we don't meet anybody here at Emerson, but if you go to Iowa, you can meet everybody. And that was in 2004. And when she found out that I was from the 413, we were in like Flint. If you know what the 413 west of Worcester, she was from Agawam, I'm from a neighboring town, and we used to eat at the same restaurants, and so she looked after me. And when I became a full-time professor here at Emerson in 2014, she became my mentor. And I was very blessed to have the opportunity to work side by side. And we started a program, the Emerson College Poll. And at the beginning of that, in 2013, nobody would pick up our work. And Marsha would call her alums and say, hey, we got a poll. Why aren't you running it? And I would be in her office, and she would call you all up and say, run this poll. And if you didn't run it, and the poll was right, she'd call you the day after the election. I was in her office, and she would say, why didn't you run the poll? It was an accurate poll. And so that's 2013. And in fact, everything that's happened in the program from a communication standpoint really is credited to Marsha. She would talk to our local anchors with Charmin. We used to go on the air when Fox 25 was over by the State House, and she would let me bring a student on. And I would always think to myself, hey, this is kind of weird. I can't get on any of these stations, and yet I'm getting on these stations. And it was all because of Marsha's connections. And she would work these connections like I was her kid. And she would work and work to make sure that we got the type of publicity she thought it deserved. And then she would bring me into the locker room. We'd do some tape with Bob Murphy, and she'd give me that feedback, the same feedback she gave all of you. I didn't have to pay for it. I was a professor, so it was a lot better that way. But we had a lot of fun working together, and I wanted to say that even, you know, to our Nexstar, we work with Nexstar 200 stations around the country. With Angel, we were doing polling in Albuquerque last year. Glad to have you back in Boston. But that's all because of Dan Salamone, a graduate of the class of '87 who credits his career because of Marsha, and when he was the head of Nexstar, brought us in to do their polling. And I just got to really give Marsha this credit because she doesn't get any of it. And that's just who she was. And that's why I just want to tell you one more story about Marsha that sometimes gets overlooked. She was a big sports fan, and we started a sports communication program back in 2016. And in the journalism department, they said, you know, Kimball, we do hard news. Sports is more soft news, and we're hard news. So we're not really all that interested in sports communication. But Marsha said, I'm very interested in it. And she bucks the entire department and says, I'm going to work with you, Dr. Payne, and whoever else wants to do sports comm. And not only did she work with us, she started the Tim Neverett internship program. She calls WEI and says, hey, we want to start this internship. I know you've got some students from Suffolk. Our students are better. And so why don't you bring us a couple of opportunities? And she did. And we had, I see Matt here and Laz. And there was one student, Jill Guerin. And Jill wanted to be a baseball announcer. And she gets the internship maybe in 2017, 2018, and does the season with the Red Sox. And then 2 years ago, she becomes the first female broadcaster of the Arizona Diamondbacks, calling Major League Baseball games. And so when you see just the impact that Marsha has, and it's all behind the curtain. She was never wanting to be the person on the show. She wanted to be the one pulling the strings behind it, and boy, could she pull those strings. I would just want to conclude in saying that as a professor, we measure our success based on our students' success. And when I take a look at this room and the talent that's been created by Marsha, she belongs in the Professor's Hall of Fame. Thank you and Godspeed.
Thank you. She was the great Oz. You know, she brought us to ABC News. She brought us to the White House. Ted Koppel was there. His teleprompter went down. And Marsha was by our side, and I'm just looking with my Greek eyes like, oh my God, what do you do? And she just leaned into me and she said, watch what he does. I mean, do you think, why am I in front of Ted Koppel at Nightline? Why am I looking at Helen Thomas asking her what was a very dumb question? Helen Thomas told me it was a dumb question. Marsha confirmed that my question was dumb and then told me how to do it better. And I just listened to all your stories and I think all the places that we've gone and the things that we've seen because of Marsha, why are you gone? We miss you. And right by her side for a lot of this is you, right over there. You can't see him, but I'm going to tell you who it is. It's Bob Salzberg. He is a legend in his own right. The longtime Associated Press broadcast editor, and with Marsha by his side, you both co-chaired the nation's largest regional journalism conferences for more than 2 decades. That is impressive and changed a lot of lives along the way. Please welcome Bob Salzberg, retired Associated Press broadcast editor, past board chair of RTDNA and RTDNF. Bob.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Rhea. That was very kind. And thank you all for being here. Thanks to Emerson College, and thanks so much to Marsha, my dear friend, Marsha. You know, when it came to journalism, educating journalists, she was tireless, passionate, uncompromising. You all know that. And throughout her long career, she was, as has been mentioned already today, an advocate for and a great friend to RTDNA, the Radio Television Digital News Association, previously known as RTNDA. And she cared very, very deeply about the organization. And it was easy to understand why. Because Marsha and RTDNA shared the exact same goals and values. They both believed in the highest quality training for journalists, current professionals and students aspiring to careers in radio, television, digital media, training that provides RTDNA members the tools needed to succeed in a complex, rapidly changing media environment. Marsha and RTDNA were uncompromising in the defense, both uncompromising in the defense of the First Amendment rights of journalists, fighting battles that weren't easy to win, but winning many of them regardless. And they shared the understanding that the privilege of being a journalist and having those rights protected came with a responsibility to adhere only to the highest ethical standards. Marsha and RTDNA also recognized the importance of developing and nurturing future generations of leaders, leaders in the newsroom, leaders in the industry, and by extension, leaders in the community. I know all of this because, as was just mentioned, I had the privilege of working alongside my close friend Marsha for many years. For nearly 2 decades, the Associated Press, RTDNA, and Emerson College partnered to produce an annual regional journalism conference and award ceremony that would become a model for similar events around the country. We were co-chairs, yes, but it was Marsha who was the driving force. And her students, many of you here today, were invaluable as organizers and volunteers for this event. And so, when I became a member of the board of directors of what was then RTNDA, I still call it that sometimes by mistake, it was natural that Marsha continued to be a never-ending source of advice and inspiration. She later encouraged me to seek election as chairman of the board and even volunteered to be my campaign manager. I mean, of course she did. She was Marsha. And okay, the campaign buttons she ordered, yeah, kind of cringeworthy, but she made sure that I went to all the right events and I met all the right people because Marsha, it seems, knew everyone, and everyone knew Marsha. And each year at the National Convention, Emerson always brought one of the largest student delegations of any school. And if you were fortunate to have been one of those students, you knew that attending the convention, even in Las Vegas, was a business trip. Marsha made certain you were there to learn, to make valuable contacts, nothing more, nothing less. After her passing, Marsha's family, with the help of Satch and others, created the Dr. Marsha Della Giustina Memorial Scholarship to be endowed through the RTDNA Foundation. This scholarship will not only honor Marsha, but will provide a vehicle for her own life work to continue well into the future. Which brings me to the message that I really want to deliver today. Scholarships, as you know, do not create themselves, nor do they endow themselves. In the past few months, through the generosity of so many people that knew and loved Marsha, a significant amount of money has been raised toward the $50,000 endowment necessary to make this scholarship a reality. But there is still a long, long way to go. So I ask today for your help in any way you possibly can to help us get closer to this goal. A GoFundMe page has been created for the Dr. Marsha Della Giustina Memorial Scholarship. You can search for it on GoFundMe.com, or you can go to a tribute page for Marsha on rtdna.org that provides a link to the fundraiser. Please, please tell others about it, others who are not here today. And if you have any questions, any suggestions, you can always reach out directly to Satch or to me. It was Marsha's wish that a scholarship be created in her name so that future journalists could pursue their dreams. Please help us make Marsha's wish come true. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. So many really incredible Marsha stories, but I have to be honest, and I think a lot of you will agree that she drove us nuts, really nuts over the years. The red pen, fail or go to the Learning Assistance Center, the constant nagging, your hair, your voice, your writing, definitely the writing, the storytelling, the journalism. That's what Marsha truly cared about. She cared about everything. She cared about us, but she especially cared about the journalism. She loved hearing about our lives, updates about the kids, updates about jobs, Some of you know that I work as an investigative reporter at WCVB, and back in April, Marsha wasn't having a lot of visitors come to see her in the facility she was at, but she kept saying I had to go there and I had to investigate. And so she allowed me to come after a little bit of prodding, and we had an amazing visit. Yes, we talked about her concerns, but we talked about my work at Northeastern, where I'm a journalism professor. We talked about my classmates. We talked about stories at Channel 5. And we just reminisced. And it was just an incredible moment that I'm so grateful to have had with her. And when I got home that night, she texted me and she said, "You lifted my spirits." And I said, "Marsha, you lifted mine." I've been thinking about ways to honor Marsha in the classroom, and as I mentioned, I'm a journalism professor at Northeastern. I just think back of the influence she had on us, and I hope I can have a fraction of that influence on my students. I know I could not get away with saying or doing some of the things that she did to us over the years, but that's why we love Marsha, absolutely. After she passed away, Satch and I went to her house in Arlington a few times, and we were going through her books, and we gathered a bunch of them together and brought them down to Studio Z in the basement of Channel 5. So they're already getting some airtime. I know Marsha would be happy about that. But I also gathered about 20 titles, and I was just thinking, what can I do? And I'm teaching an investigative reporting class. I'm actually going there tonight. And on the first day, I brought in this box of books and said to the students, I'm not having you buy a textbook this year. This year, you're going to read one of Marsha's books. And so they each picked one. They're going to be presenting on it later in the semester, but I said, I'm going to this memorial service today, and tonight, you just got to give us an anecdote. You're going to stand up and tell us something about Marsha's book and sort of what it means to you, and I'm just hoping that's a way to honor her and honor her legacy. So thank you, Marsha, for everything that you've done. We truly love you. There will never be anyone like you again. Thank you.
My name is Naja Mawasi. I graduated from Emerson College in 2010. Please bear with me. I'm going to be okay. There's so much I want to say to Marsha. I know that I'm on limited time. So I'm going to make this quick. I met Marsha in 2010. I wasn't even going to take her course, her capstone course, because so many people had told me that she was mean. Well, several people told me that she was mean and that there was a lot of work, yada, yada. I had an internship at WGBH, and I met a gentleman there. I do not remember his name, but I'm very grateful that I met him because he is the one that encouraged me to take Marsha's class. He said, absolutely, that's the person that you want to educate you. She is the best. Well, I am so glad that I didn't listen to the nonsense from other people, and I listened to him and I followed my heart. I actually met Marsha before I took her class, and she was so welcoming, so adorable, this short older lady, and I'm like, yeah, this is the person that I want to educate me. What an experience that was. Going forward, I developed a pretty close friendship with Marsha throughout the years. Yeah, she helped me network, finding jobs. That was what she was fabulous at. But what was more important about Marsha is that she really genuinely cared. And she gave detail to everything that she did when she was trying to help people, especially me. She mentored my daughter as my daughter's in college now. What an amazing experience knowing Marsha Della Giustina. She is the person that sets, I believe, she sets the standard of how people should be and how people should treat other people. She was truly a genuine and just an amazing soul, and she served her purpose. And when I saw Marsha at the hospital, It was very, very overwhelming. I went up there several times. I was fortunate enough to have the opportunity to go there often, as I just wanted to make sure that she was okay, and that everybody at that hospital was doing everything possible for Marsha. Marsha, I just gave you back what you gave to me. It was only right. It was only fair. And I feel honored that I know you. I feel honored that you introduced me to your family. I know that you're in better space. I know that for sure. I sit here relaxing on Marsha's couch. And these are her paintings. I never even knew the lady drew, that she was a painter. So, anyway, thank you, Marsha.
Hello, everyone. My name is Ross Ketchke. I graduated in 2018, but we can turn the 1 and 8 around for those of you who maybe graduated a few decades before me. But we all shared Marsha, and that's what makes today so special. I heard about the legend of Marsha long before I ever met the person. Everyone at Emerson had a story. Some were about a tough, hard-nosed professor who forced her students to change their hair or their name and made it clear we knew nothing about journalism. Others were about a woman who loved her students like they were her own children, sacrificing her time to listen and counsel on anything from troubles at work to family tragedies. I was lucky enough to learn that all of those stories in their own way were true. I had so many great teachers here at Emerson. In fact, lots of you are here today. Hello. But Marsha was the first to look me in the eyes and tell me, you have a future in this business. Just stop talking so darn fast. Trying to remember that today. She sent me into internships with long lists of people just to say hello to on my first day, her friends and former students. Those relationships, I think, may be the greatest testament to Marsha's legacy. To borrow a football term, we are all products of the Marsha coaching tree. Marsha's alumni have been my friends, my coworkers, my news directors, and my greatest mentors. As a senior here at Emerson, I was so lucky to start my career working part-time at WCVB here in Boston. And imagine my surprise on my first day when my assistant news director, executive producer, the lead anchors, and about 50% of the newsroom staff I'd be working for were in one way or another one of Marsha's kids. In fact, that same year, it was right here on this stage that Marsha and Maria Stefanos decided to embarrass me in front of the entire student body at the Evie Awards, saying it was horrible I was not there for the ceremony. Unlike Maria, I was working in the newsroom that night. Marsha only later agreed that was an acceptable excuse to be absent. Each of these mentors along the way are a reminder that graduating from Emerson College does not mean graduating from the Marsha Hard Knock School of Journalism. Years into my career as a reporter, I'd still get my bi-weekly calls from Marsha. She wanted to know what I was working on, how my life was going, and if I had finally stopped talking so fast. Only a little. Well, those calls never meant more to me than in these last 2 years. My mother was diagnosed with cancer in fall of 2021, and once I told Marsha that news, those calls started coming in every week, but often more. They would always end with a prayer that at times were longer than the rest of the phone call combined, but I always appreciated that time. The last time that I heard from Marsha was a short phone call just after my mother passed away earlier this year. She couldn't talk long, but wanted to say that she had been thinking about me and praying for my family. And I knew she had been, because that's who Marsha was, more than an educator, more than a mentor, and larger than life. I hope we can all bring just a fraction of who Marsha was to the next generation of journalists, our students, our interns, our colleagues. They may not have had Marsha in the classroom, but through each of us, her lessons and her love can live on. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Liz Toff's class of 2002, and
Irene
wait
Mahoney-Page.
quickly. We're going to do this together, but we didn't write anything down because Marsha would say breaking news, right? Go ahead.
I am class of 99, and I just want to say Marsha would be overwhelmed right now by today's outpouring of love. And I can hear her saying, I'm sure you can all, network. So-and-so has a job opening. What are you doing? You've got to network. She was always looking out for us, no matter what. Even if we were in our dream job, there would always be the next step.
And it's weird because Irene and I graduated 5 years between each other, and I was working as an anchor reporter in Providence, Rhode Island, and she walked through the door as my news director, and I was humbled. I have not seen Irene in the flesh for 12 years. So I have to ask Irene, did you follow the money?
I followed the money, I memorized, I knew the players, I did all the Marsha-isms. She had all of those Marsha-isms where she would tell us, follow the money, trust no one, believe nothing. I hear her in my ear daily. I got out of the news business not long ago, and in my current job, I still hear Marsha in my head. So the skills she taught me, and I think all of us, just have carried us through every stage of our lives. I look back at my time at Emerson. She would pull out transparency papers, the transparency
red pen.
sheet with the projector, and she would go through our scripts in front of the whole class and X out and don't do this and change this. And we always would dread every time we saw our script make it to the overhead projector. But she came out of there saying, respect your classmates. They're going to be your boss one day. She told us from day one, we're not students, we're journalists. And we should act like one and be prepared. I have a quick story I'm going to tell, true Marsha fashion. When I was in her class in journalism, we had a pretty big trial here in Boston of an English nanny who was on trial for shaking a baby. My friend Justin and I were kind of a tag team and covering the case. We went out there with all of the journalists that were out there, all of the news. It was a national story. We had been out there all day, and he and I thought, okay, we've got what we need. We're gonna go home. And I lived in Everett. He lived on campus. We went to a home, and I got home and in the door, and the news was coming on that a verdict had been reached. And I called Justin in a panic, and I said, Marsha's gonna kill us if we're not down there. She is gonna kill us. You need to get dressed right now. I am in the car, I'm on my way. He ran from the little building to the depot, which was still on Beacon Street, ran before it closed to get all the equipment. I rolled up on 2 wheels, threw him and the equipment in the car, and we hauled our butts to Cambridge. Got there, set up shop, did our stand-ups, got our stuff. We were so happy. I got home later that night, and my answering machine, I know I'm dating myself, was blinking.
Marsha.
And the first message was, I cannot believe that you and Justin are not down there and you went home. I cannot believe you are going to miss the biggest story of your career. They have a verdict and I can't believe it. Next message. I'm really disappointed. I just cannot believe that you and Justin did not stay. What kind of journalist do you think you're going to be? Last message. So I just saw you and Justin in the background on Access Hollywood. And I just saw you in the background of WCVB's live shot. Great job. Good job.
I do want to say one thing. So when I graduated Emerson College, I got a job before any of my classmates. We were in RTNDA in Las Vegas. And I got a phone call from a news director that we want you to be a reporter in Kennewick, Washington. And oh my God, Marsha's like, take it. Joanne, her sister's here. I said, Joanne, can you look at this, my thing, contract that's going on? She said, don't take it. So I didn't take it. The woman on the phone said, I can't believe that you're not gonna, you're turning down a job at 22 years old. Flash forward, Vegas, I got another job in Lincoln, Nebraska, And I was there for 3 months. And Marsha was so proud. And I was doing a ride-along with the police department, and a drunk driver hit us, and we hit a tree. And I broke all my ribs. I was in intensive care. My foot was hanging off by a ligament. I was 23, right? I'm a one-man band. And my family said, they're in Boston, they're trying to come out here, and Marsha called me and said, I wish I could get out there, and I love you, and I'm praying. And I said, Marsha, I don't know if I can do this. And I went through physical therapy, and my family wanted me to come home, and I said, you know what, I'm gonna be a producer. And I did physical therapy for 6 months, and Marsha said, Liz, you're gaining knowledge and keep doing it, and she was in my ear. And I ended up becoming an anchor in Providence, Rhode Island, and she was always in the background, and she pushed me because I wanted to give up. My parents said, I don't want you there, you're in the sticks, like, get out. But Marsha was always, called me in the hospital, in my ear, and I love her so much. And I was there, and I saw her in the hospital before she died, and I held her hand, and I told her, you were there for me, and I'll always be there for you. And I love you, Marsha.
Marsha had such a great way of just staying connected to all of us, whether we were in her class or not. I quickly want to just say, my friend Justin and I, when we were in school, we dubbed her the mothership. She was the mothership because we all would go out, but everybody would come back at some point and touch base with her and always pass through her orbit and return at some point. I think what I always will remember of Marsha too was her sense of humor. It was so understated but so funny. She would tell me, I need you to be on this how to find a job panel. I was working in LA at the time. I need you to be on this panel for the students. And then, I'd get prepped and she'd say, I don't know why I'm even putting you on this panel. You never had to look for a job in your life. And I said, well, I never had to look for a job because of you. Because as soon as people heard that I went to Emerson and I had Marsha, I was in. So that was you that got me to that point. I think, again, just having her here, she always will be with us. I want her legacy to live, I think, within all of us. She believed in each and every one of us. I was in the business across the country for years. I then started teaching at Emerson because of Marsha. And, she would email me throughout my career when I got awards, when things happened, and how proud she was. But it was teaching at Emerson, and she asked me to teach her classes when she had jaw surgery. And she looked at me and she said, I trust you completely. And that's when I felt accomplished. She taught me to lead. She was more than a mentor. She was family. She took part in my wedding. She held and laughed with my kids and came to birthday parties and barbecues. Marsha was strong in her faith, and at some point, I'm sure she prayed over each and every one of us in this room. One of her favorite verses seems so fitting for today as we remember the impact that she had on all of us. It's Matthew 25:23. Well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful with a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Come and share your master's happiness.
Thank you. Oh, Marsha. What do you think? Do you think this was a good way to celebrate Marsha's life? And this wouldn't have happened without one of Marsha's favorite sons, Satch. Off the charts, incredible to Marsha during his entire time at Emerson, bringing us all together at the end of her life until right now. John Satriali, Satch. Let's hear it for John.
the Celebration of Life team, and the great Emerson College. I know Marsha's here. I know she sees us. I know she feels us. Thank you, Marsha, for pouring that foundation. Look at that picture, the black and white one and up there. Marsha. That is a good photo. Thank you for letting me be part of all of this with all of you. What else is there to say? Right on cue, our Marsha gets the last word.
How's everybody doing? Everybody having a good time? Pretty impressive, very impressive. All dressed up, looking great. Excellent. Show them how it opens up. Ah. Yay! Ready, twirl? Twirl. Okay. I want to do this? Okay. I finally feel good. I think it's because I just critiqued the students' packages. Do y'all remember ENG? Oh my gosh, this is their first package.
Did they cut their hair? Did they follow the money?
No, neither. So I went into Marsha mode. You know what that means. She didn't do an anchor tag. The course is almost over. She knows to do an anchor lead-in and an anchor tag. And if I don't give her an F, she's going to continue to do this week after week after week. But thank you very much, everybody, for coming on. And thank you for letting me go on your journey and be part of your journey of your life. Thank you so much. I'm so proud of each one of you. God has given me a wonderful life, wonderful. And the fact that I've been able to be a part of history and watching politics, I mean, just seeing what you all have been covering, being on trips with you all, and going to see you at your workplace, talking to you, listening about your stories for, 45 years. I started in 1976 at Emerson and retired in 21. Thank you, Joanne, my dear sister, I can't live without. Thank you. I love you all. Thank you. God bless you all, because we're all in God's hands. That's where we are. Bye.